Hi, I'm just responding to Rudolf Ondrich discusses LP transfers, which he's just posted up onto YouTube, and I'll give the URLs in my info thing over here somewhere, over here or over there somewhere. Anyway, really, I'm just adding what I've found out about LP transfer, and really it goes back to really sound hi-fi philosophy. If you're going to get the best transfer, for me, you've got to make sure that what goes in is the best quality that you can possibly get. And so, without disparaging Rudolf too much, his record player really isn't up to hi-fi standards. I'm sure that one day he'll get himself a decent hi-fi system, but you know, I appreciate that, you know, when you're at school, whatever, you use what you can get, and he really does use what he can get to the best advantage, and so really no worries there. But if you can, go onto eBay, if you're strapped for cash, go onto eBay and find a hi-fi separates turntable from yesteryear, and the sort of brands to look out for are Rega, R-E-G-A, their planar range, or P as they're sometimes called, is essentially value hi-fi, but it's extremely good quality, and even their brand new model P1 is an improvement on the sort of thing that I've seen on the internet where they advertise, you know, these USB record decks, because they really use fairly low grade components, and I'll talk about those in a minute. So Rega is a good brand to look out for, and their P1, as I say, is extremely competitively priced and would do the job very well. I use their P5, but as I say, I mean, that people might consider that a little bit over the top. It was quite expensive. Project also make good record players. They're a Czechoslovakian company, and they do make a deck that is specifically for the purpose of transferring records. From sort of yesteryear, brands like Pioneer and Technics have made some good turntables, and so have a company called Dual, D-U-A-L, that are, I think they're German. Their CS range was really, really popular in the late 70s and 80s. Very, very basic bargain hi-fi. What I would try and avoid, though, with Dual, they made a lot of automatic decks. Well, the money that they spent on the automatic lift-off and the automatic drop-down onto the record would have been money better spent on using higher grade sound quality components. Well, this is a fairly reasonable view of my record player at the moment. As you can see, I've left a record on there, which is not really good practice, but never mind. Let's remove that. Alright, so we've got a little turntable mat which will come off here. The actual platter here is thick glass. Alright, this is, as I say, this is the Rega P5 record player. Even their P3 uses the same turntable as this, and the P1 and P2 use a sort of, I think it's like an MDF thing, but it's still thick. Alright. And uses a very simple motor to spin it round, but its speed stability is perfect. All right, so that, just even that alone, will stop unwanted vibrations from getting in. All right. Secondly, I've got a tone arm here. Let's move around here slightly. Now this tone arm, it's a very simple tone arm, but it does allow at the back. It has some counterweight adjustments here, and there are videos on YouTube to show you how to set up your cartridge and your tone arm using these counterweights. But having that at the back does enable you to upgrade this, which is your cartridge. Okay, very, very, very basic record players come with very, very basic cartridges. And the real absolute anathema, terrible cartridges to look out for will be something called a piezoelectric or ceramic cartridge. Basically, they use a very, very outmoded way of picking up the information from the groove and sending it to an amplifier. And it cannot, with the best will in the world, it cannot track grooves as accurately as modern cartridges can today. They were very, very popular in the 50s and 60s. In fact, I've even seen on YouTube RCA Victor telling you all about stereo replay and describing how these cartridges work. But if you imagine a train going down a ski slalom track with lots of poles in it, and a very complex one at that, basically, if you imagine a stylus and a groove with a piezoelectric cartridge, it is like a train going down a ski slalom slope. A more modern cartridge, such as this is one made by Autophon, they will be moving magnet cartridges, double M or cartridges. They're not the absolute dog's bollocks. A more shall we say, capable cartridge would be called Moving Coil cartridges, or MC, but these are very cheap and very common. All right, you can buy a good moving magnet cartridge for about £50. You can buy a cheap moving magnet cartridge for about sort of £15–20. But the sort of cartridge that is fitted onto the usual sort of bog standard transfer your LPs to digital things, those piezoelectric ones are probably about 50p of the price of the total deck that you buy. They ruin records. As Rudolph says, you might be able to minimise that if you record at a lower speed and then use software to bring it back up to speed, but you shouldn't need to. If you use a decent cartridge in the first place, it will you won't need to do that. The other point that I want to make here as well is that playing records at the wrong speed is another way to damage them. And although you might be interested in making a good transfer, at the end of the day, those records are absolutely priceless in terms of having an object to pick up and play, and they are going to become part of history, and they ought to be kept in as best condition as you can. While I'm here, I'll show my lead setup, if you will. Let's move back here a minute. All right, my lead setup actually is not as good as Rudolph's. I mean, this cable here is really bog standard cable. I have got some better ones, but I don't know, I suppose I'm using them for other things. This thing here is a little adapter to convert the RCA phono here to a stereo headphone input style thing for my Apple laptop. If you use a laptop, then the chances are that you'll improve your transfer if you don't have it plugged into the mains. I don't know about other countries, but in the UK, the main supply is pretty dodgy and pretty noisy and hummy. Just to bang another nail into the coffin of piezoelectric cartridges, the treble and bass response from them was severely compromised, and the reason being, in the case of the treble, was that the grooves for that are necessarily extremely tiny and extremely complex, and the crystals inside the cartridge couldn't react with the sort of speed that was required to get the best out of them. So therefore, the treble response was quite heavily reduced, and that therefore meant that the upper bass was overemphasized just because the sparkle had gone. Having said that, though, when Rudolph played Summer Night City, even through his terrible microphone, which he knows is terrible, I was still tapping my toes to it, and that is something that vinyl does, which I don't think CD can do. So long live vinyl, and long live vinyl transfers.